everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and I'm here today to film my TBR check-in and book haul for the month of May. May was an extravagant month for books for me, as it typically is, because May is the month that Mother's Day falls within, and so I often am gifted either a gift card or a trip to a bookstore or something like that for Mother's Day, and so that, impacts how many books I bring into my life. But we can get started by showing my TBR balance sheet. So let's talk about the numbers, shall we? I read a total of 14 books in the month of May. 8 of those were off my physical TBR. 11 books were brought into the house. Excuse the mistake I made. I thought I had 10 right up until about 5 minutes before filming this video, and then I realized there was actually 11 books that came in. I unhauled 1 book, and so that left me with a +2 for the month, and that brings my total up to 107. +2 is not bad considering I brought 11 books in for the month. So I don't, I think that's fair. I'm happy with only a +2 after my extravagance for the month. So let's talk first about the DNF, shall we? So I DNF'd a book that I had on my ancient TBR. My ancient TBR is, this stack of books right here that are the oldest books on my physical TBR. And I have been trying to read that stack down. I'd like to have that completed by the end of 2024. So to that end, I picked up Salt to the Sea by Rushdie Sapetes, and I actually grabbed the audiobook from my library for this one, and I tried listening to it, and it is nothing to do with the book. I'm sure the book is fine, but this is a World War II narrative. It follows multiple characters, and each chapter is from a different character's perspective. So there's Joanna, Amelia, there's some boys too, if I'm Florian, and there's a couple other characters. And so you get each chapter is from one of the perspectives of these characters. And they are different characters fleeing the Nazi regime in Germany, and for different various reasons. And I just don't want to read a World War II fictional narrative right now. I don't really like World War II as a topic for my reading, and I just did not want to be in that headspace. So I have decided to let this one go because I know that Rushdie Sapetes is a very popular author, and if I choose to read this again at some other time, I could pick this up from the library. So this one is going to go because there are many books that I would rather read, including all of these books that I brought into my home. So let's get started talking about the new books, the new to me books that I had brought in. So the very first book I'd like to talk about is a book that was gifted to me from the publisher, and it is this gorgeous nonfiction, Sing Like a Fish, How Sound Rules Life Underwater by Amorina Kingdom. Look at this glorious cover. This is published by Crown, and they reached out to me and asked if I would like a copy to read this one and review it. And I would tell you that this book was released on Tuesday, what day was that? June 4th. So this is available right now for you to purchase if you are interested. And what this book is about is this details what we know about the science of sound in the ocean. So for a long time, everybody thought that the ocean was silent, that in the depths of the ocean, there was no sound. And we now know, of course, that that is not the case. Like, many creatures make sounds, and they use those sounds for various purposes in their life cycles. And the impact of human sound on that environment is very huge. And I've read some books about that, but this book is specifically all about that. Amorina Kingdom is a Canadian author. She writes nonfiction, and she's a journalist. She's a science writer. So I am extremely interested to read about this book. I'm hoping to pick it up this month in June. You can't probably see it. I don't know if you can see it, but there is raised bumps on the cover, in the fish bodies and things like that. So the feeling of this book is just fabulous. It's beautiful with these fish on the cover, and then this texture on here. I mean, just a lovely copy. So I'm very excited to get into this one, hoping to read it in the month of June. So thank you to Crown Publishing for that one. So that was the book that I received from the publisher. And then the rest of these I purchased myself. So I received a lovely gift card for Mother's Day from my husband, and I used it to purchase the next books that I will need to read for the Book Naturalist Book Club. So in the month of June, we are reading How Far the Light Reaches, A Life in 10 Sea Creatures by Sabrina Imbler. And this is nonfiction for Pride Month, so we'll be reading this one in June. And then The Mermaid of Black Conch by Monique Roffey. This is fiction for Caribathon. And this is about a man who finds a mermaid in 1976. And then the story, like what happens after he finds this mermaid. I think this is kind of like a parable or a fable type of a story. So we shall see what this one's all about. And then this one is essays about different sea creatures. So you know I love reading about life in the ocean. So very excited to read both of these. Also in the month of June for Book Naturalists. And then in July, I believe in July, we will be reading this glorious copy of Soil, The Story of a Black Mother's Garden by Camila T. Dungy. This is Book Naturalists for July, and this is like a journal-style discussion of being Black and having a garden, I think in the suburbs of somewhere in Colorado, right? Yeah, Fort Collins, Colorado. So I just think that is just beautiful. Just a lovely, lovely cover. And the topic really interests me as well, like gardening and what it's like to do suburban gardening or urban gardening and what it's like to do that as a Black person. Like, yeah, high on my list of things that I'm interested about. So that's going to be for July. So those books are what I purchased with my gift card. And then my husband and I took a weekend getaway trip up to St. John, New Brunswick. And of course, anytime I go anywhere, I'm like searching for bookstores, and I was able to find some bookstores. So I purchased 2 books in a used bookstore. And so I'll talk about those 2 first. And the first one is a classic, and it is Vanity Fair by William Makepeace Thackeray. Vanity Fair is a book that I have on my Mooks and Gripes bucket list. I did a video about this a couple years ago about 10 books that I wanted to read at some point in my lifetime. I've never read Vanity Fair. I don't believe I've seen the movie even, and I feel like this is one of those holes in my reading that I need to complete. It is super huge, but I thought that the font size in this one was pretty good. There was a couple of different copies, a couple of different versions. This one is from Arcturus Books, which I hadn't heard of, but the font size was really great. So while we're here, like this is the 2 bookstore dogs in the bookstore that I was in. This is Honey and Bear at Loyalist City Coin and Books. So yeah, these dogs were in the store the day that we were there visiting and purchasing our books, which was super fun. Also in that same bookstore, I should say I purchased this book. I believe this one was $4 for this one, and then $4 Canadian, so even better price for me because I bought it with American money. Elizabeth George's A Place of Hiding. So this is a book in the Detective Lindley mystery series that I am currently working my way through. And I don't even know what number book this one is. I think I'm quite a ways away from reading this one, I think, but maybe not. Maybe it's my next one. I can't remember. But I know that I didn't have a copy of it, and I was able to get this hardcover for $3. So yeah, had to get it. So that was what I purchased in the used bookstore. We then, as we were walking around the downtown area, you can walk, there's like it's not all underground, but some of it is underground, but is a series of shopping mall type buildings that you can walk through that are all connected with pedestrian walkways over the roads and stuff. And at the end, at one end of that is a branch of the New Brunswick Library. And in that library, you can walk in. It's beautiful. It's like lovely artwork, big windows that look out over the harbor, and it's just really lovely. But they also had a room with books that they were selling, so I, of course, had to look through the books that they were selling. And I found a copy of The Butchering Art, Joseph Lister's Quest to Transform the Grisly World of Victorian Medicine by Lindsey Fitzharris. So this is nonfiction. I believe it was Kim at Middle of the Book March that read this a couple years ago, and that, you know, her reading it and enjoying it really recommended it to me. It's been on my radar for a while, but her review really pushed it over the edge for me for something that I like wanted to read really, really a lot. So I'm excited to try this one. I think Lindsey Fitzharris had a book on the BookTube Prize last year as well that was about facial reconstruction, and I never get a chance to read that one either. So I am late to the game with Lindsey Fitzharris and her nonfiction, but I've now got myself a copy of The Butchering Art, which I got for $2. So I can't stop bragging about my good deals. So that was the used books. So then before we left St. John, we did go out to like sort of an outlying area where there was a new bookstore, the I can never think of the name of the bookstore. It's Canada's version of Barnes and Noble's. You know what I mean? They have a bookstore chain that is similar to Barnes and Noble's, and I can't think of it off the top of my head. But anyway, we went to that bookstore, and I picked up 4 books there. And the first one is this piece of fiction. This is Moon of the Crusted Snow by Waubgeshig Rice. Sorry if I did not pronounce that right, but I think it's Waubgeshig Rice. This is Indigenous fiction about set in a future where something has happened and a remote Indigenous tribe up in northern Canada, like the power goes out. So they realize, like at first they think it's just, you know, like a normal glitchy thing and the power will come back on. But when it doesn't, they realize that something must have happened. And then all of a sudden, individuals start showing up from outside their community, fleeing something. And it's about how outsiders impact this very isolated Indigenous community and what that means to the Indigenous community as they're trying to survive. So I've heard great things about this, and I believe that there is a sequel to this that has already been published. So when I saw this on the shelf, I was like, yes, please. And it is a shorty, so I'm thinking if I don't get to it before September, that this one will be perfect for shorty September. So that one's been on my wish list for ages too. Then I picked up a book that I will be buddy reading in June, and that is Knife, Meditations After an Attempted Murder by Salman Rushdie. I'm going to buddy read this with Joe Smith in June, and I've read a little bit of Salman Rushdie. I've read some of his nonfiction. I read Joseph Anton, his memoir, basically, and I read another piece of fiction by him with Joe, which I'm blanking on the name of right now. So I was really interested to read his, meditations after he was assaulted a couple years ago and lost his eye. So yeah, I think this one's going to be, I've heard some really good reviews of this. They reviewed this on the Book Riot podcast, and it sounded like it was going to be something that was up my alley. So I'm excited to get started on this one in the month of June. And then I picked up the next book that I want to read in a science fiction series that I started about a year ago. And this is Caliban's War by James S.A. Corey. This is the Expanse series. They're huge. I read Leviathan Wakes, like I said, about a year ago. And I was hoping to find a used copy of this particular, book number 2 in this series. And I just kept looking for it and never finding it. And so finally, Sandy over at Miss Reads a Lot has been reading this series, and she keeps raving about it. Every time she talks about it, I'm like, I need to get back to this series. I love a good space opera science fiction series, and that's what this is. They're just a wicked good time. At least the first one was a wicked good time. And sometimes I just want to dive into an adventure story, something that's fun and doesn't require a lot of, critical thinking on my part. And so I think that's what this will give me. And I'm very excited to continue on in this series. There's quite a few more books in this series, and they're all like this size. So, and one thing I really love about them is they're all in these huge trade paperbacks. And I prefer to read in this size book versus, do I even have a mass market paperback? I don't even have one right here. Oh yeah, I do right here. Nope, that's not it. That one is right here. So here is a normal mass market paperback science fiction story. And here is the James S.A. Corey size, like massive, massive. But these little, these are all right too. But I just, for some reason, I really love these larger size paperbacks. So excited to get back into that. And then the last book here is a book that I've actually already read. So while I was in that bookstore, I found a copy of Eve, How the Female Body Drove 200 Million Years of Human Evolution by Cat Bohannon. I read this for the BookTube Prize. I just talked about this in my last video. This was my #1 pick for my group in the BookTube Prize this last round. This is nonfiction, all exactly what it says on the tin. I was reading a library copy that somebody had been eating something while they were reading, and there was just nasty food particles and like fingerprints of some kind of food on the page, and it grossed me out so bad I couldn't continue to read it. So I was so excited to find this copy. I loved this book. One thing I highly encourage you, if you're interested in this book, to read the physical copy, because not only does it have these awesome like illustrations, there are footnotes within the text, and the footnotes are so funny and so informative, and they really add a lot to the text. And I just think I would have missed out had I not been able to get the physical copy. And so this is, I'm not going to review this. I just reviewed this in my last video. And this always happens to me when I talk about a book that I'm hauling that I really, really loved. It makes me want to just talk about it. But just know that I love this book. I'm really pleased that I have my own copy to have on my shelves, because this is definitely a book that I'm going to want to refer to and go back and reread in the future. So those are the books that I brought into my home. That is the status of my TBR 107 books. It's okay. It's okay. I'm happy with 107. I may get it down to under 100 again. Shorty September is coming up, and that's a good chance to clean out all the shelves. But we'll see. And if I don't, it's been fun trying. So I will keep you updated. I'll be back next month with my next TBR check-in. I hope you're all doing well and finding some great books to read. I'll talk to you later.